A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Before we dive into the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader that this novel is narrated in 3 books. Book 3. The Muslim Apostate Girl and Her Infidel Lover. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real life of a Muslim girl in Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Therefore, any resemblance to real people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 62. They have no right on the promised land of the children of Israel. As soon as Dr. Ibtihal has been released from prison in Canada, she surprised the world with her new book about the false claims of the Muslims that the promised land belongs to them alone, and the Jews are land stealers. She chose to call her new book, Muslims Have No Right on the Promised Land of the Children of Israel. In her book, she referred to all the recorded histories of the inhabitants of that land. Among all those ancient dwellers of the land, the Arabs have no right to connect themselves to any one of them. The present Palestinians are trying to relate themselves to the ancient Canaanites and Philistines who dwelt in the land before the Jews arrived from Egypt under the leadership of Moses and Joshua. Those 2 ancient inhabitants were not Arabs, and many researchers on their origins traced them back to non-Arabic origins. Scholars agreed that the ancient Philistines immigrated to the Promised Land from the island of Crete in Greece. The ancient Canaanites spoke a language that is not Arabic, and it is extinct today. The Canaanite languages or Hebraic languages are a subfamily of the Semitic languages, which were spoken by the ancient peoples of the Canaan region, including Canaanites, Israelites, Phoenicians, and the ancient Philistines. All of them became extinct as native languages in the early 1st millennium AD, although the Hebrew language remained in continuous literary and religious use among Jews. The lands of Israel and southern Syria once formed the empire of the Canaanites and the early Phoenicians. Archaeologists have found evidence of a definite connection between the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, linking them to the Egyptians. The Canaanite pantheon of gods is similar to that of the Egyptians, the Hindus, and the builders, citing Norman Paulson, Christ Consciousness, page 354, 1984. The intelligent Sudanese girl Dr. Ibtihal consulted the Old Testament of the Jews and the Quran of the Muslims. She found that the Jewish scriptures and the Quran of the Muslims both revealed that the Jews had a divine claim on the land but not the Muslims. The Muslims invaded the land in the 7th century AD, at the time of the 2nd Caliph Omar. The Jews possessed the land at the time of Moses and Joshua in 1000 BC. The Bible states that God had given the land of Canaan to the Jews as an everlasting inheritance. See the Old Testament in Genesis 15, verses 12 to 18, 17, verses 7 to 8, 28, verse 13, 35, verses 11 to 12, Exodus 23, verse 31, Psalm 105, verses 8 to 11. The Bible states that the Israelis were used by God to punish the Canaanites for their abominable practices, which led the land to vomit them out of it. See Leviticus 18, verse 30, Deuteronomy 18, verses 9 to 11. God destroyed 7 Canaanite nations and gave their land to the children of Israel as an everlasting inheritance, present-day Israel. See the Book of Acts of the Apostles chapter 13, verse 19. As a matter of fact, the Promised Land includes today Israel, Jordan, and parts of Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. It has been described in terms of territory from the Great River of Egypt, the Red Sea, to the Euphrates River of Syria and Iraq, Exodus 23, verse 31. Despite that, the British deceived the Jews and created 2 countries, named them Transjordan and Iraq, and gave them to the Arabs. Today, the UN is repeating the same deception by trying to create a jihadi state and calling it Palestine to fulfill the so-called two-state solution. The land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people. It has been given to them by God, established by God, held in trust for them by God when they were driven from it, restored to them by God, and destined by God to be their homeland forever. Even the Quran of Muslims confirm the claim of the Jews on the Promised Land, which today is called Israel. See Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, verses 20 to 21. The Muslim scholar, Khalil Muhammad, who is a Palestinian assistant professor at the Department of Religious Studies at San Diego State University in the USA, states that the Quran in Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, verses 20 to 21 states quite clearly, Moses said to his people, O my people, remember the bounty of God upon you when he bestowed prophets upon you, and made you kings, and gave you that which had not been given to anyone before you amongst the nations. O my people, enter the holy land which God has written for you, and do not turn tail, otherwise, you will be losers. Professor Khalil Muhammad continues, Ibn Kathir said, that which God has written for you, that which God has promised to you by the words of your father Israel, that it is the inheritance of those among you who believe. Muhammad al-Shawkani interprets Makataba al-Alaka to mean that which God has allotted and predestined for you in his primordial knowledge, deeming it as a place of residence for you, quoting Khalil Muhammad, 1992, Volume 2, page 41. There is no verse in the Quran or one hadith of the Prophet Muhammad stating that God has given the Muslims or the Arabs the land of Israel as an inheritance. Arab Muslims, who are known today as Palestinians, their ancestors occupied that land through the Islamic invasions at the time of the second Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab. According to the Jewish Torah's accounts, after God destroyed the earth and its inhabitants through the flood, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons of Ham are Cush, from whom came the Babylonians and Assyrians, Genesis 10, verse 6, verses 8 to 11, Mizraim, from whom came the Egyptians and Philistines, Genesis 10, verse 13, Phut and Canaan. Canaan is the father of the Canaanite tribes, Sidon, Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites, Genesis 10, verse 15. All those tribes formed what was known as the Canaanites that dwelt in the land of Canaan, which was later given by God to the Jews as an everlasting inheritance. According to the Bible, later the Canaanites scattered, and the borders of Canaan reached from Sidon toward Gerar as far as Gaza, and then toward Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, as far as Lasha, Genesis 10, verse 19. Mark Wingfield states, the Canaanites, according to biblical and historical records, worshipped fertility gods, and engaged in all manner of illicit sexual practices and mystical wizardry as part of their religious rites. Jewish and Christian scriptures record the Canaanite practices as detestable to the Lord. Due to their abominable practices, God ordered the Jews to kick them out of their land and take possession of it. The children of Israel, acting on the promise of God, took possession of the land from the Canaanites sometime around the 13th century BC. Ancient scriptures say God instructed the Hebrews to wipe out the Canaanites because of their wickedness. Muslim historians admitted that Muslim mujahideen invaded Palestine and captured the land from the Byzantines after defeating them in the Battle of the Yarmouk. After the Battle of Yarmouk, the next step was the capture of Jerusalem. The Eternal City was called Jerusalem, but the Arab invaders changed it to Al-Quds. The siege of Jerusalem lasted for months, after which the city agreed to surrender, but only to the Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab in person. The Caliph Omar came, and the city surrendered in April 637 AD, after which Abu Ubaidah sent the commanders Amr bin al-As, Yazid bin Abu Sufyan, and Shurbil out to reconquer the portions of Palestine that they had abandoned prior to the Battle of Yarmouk in the Levant. The long-lasting world's hatred of the Jews, anti-Semitism, proves the undeniable divine maxim that they are hated because they are the chosen people. Therefore, anti-Semitism is from the devil. A true Christian should always love the Jews and support their right to return to their homeland in the promised land which God has given to them as an everlasting inheritance. The Jews are the most gifted people in the world. They are accomplished people in the arts, business, philosophy, education, finance, science, etc. God gave them the land of Israel as an everlasting inheritance, made them into a great nation, and promised to bless those who bless the Jews, and to curse those cursing them. Genesis 12, verses 1-3. No other nation has been chosen by God except Israel. No other people have become the custodians of God's truth in the Holy Bible except the Jews. No other nation has offered a book to mankind that is verifiable through science, reason, history, morality, and prophecy except the nation of the Jews. No other nation has offered the human race a Bible, prophets, and of course, God's Messiah Jesus Christ who died for the sin of the world except the nation of Israel. The Bible said salvation is of the Jews, John 4, verse 22. Many nations are jealous of the nation of Israel, and many more want to destroy it. To hate the Jews is equal to hating God. It is spiritual suicide to hate Israel. The Bible said all those who hate Zion are going to face defeat, disgrace, destruction, and being removed from the blessing of God. Psalm 129, verse 5. A true Christian is a Gentile saved and converted over to Orthodox Judaism. A Jew converted to true Christianity is a completed Jew. A true Christian is the one who says to the Jew as Ruth said to Naomi, "Your people will be my people, and your God my God." The Book of Ruth 1, verse 16. A convert to Christianity is a convert to Orthodox Judaism. Therefore, anti-Semitism within the church is a theology of abomination. Christianity is Jewish. The Jews had been kicked out of their land 3 times, returning time and again. They are the only people in the entire world who have remained without a country for 20 centuries. And all of a sudden, God gathered them from all over the world and brought them back to their promised land. God promised them a land of everlasting inheritance. Many mighty nations occupying that land had been uprooted by God and kicked out, such as the Babylonians, Romans, Greeks, Byzantines, Arabs, Crusaders, and British, among others. No nation has the right to claim that land except the Jews. The Arab Palestinians claim ownership, but neither the Quran nor the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad have ever mentioned Palestine as belonging to the Arabs or to the Muslims. The Quran states very clearly that God has given the land to the children of Israel. See Surah Al-Ma'idah, verses 20-21. God did not give the Arab Muslims the land of Israel, but it had been acquired at the tips of their swords and spears during the 7th century at the time of the Caliphate of Omar ibn al-Khattab. It had been the same way with the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, the Byzantines, the Muslims, the Crusaders, the Egyptian Mamluks, the Fatimids, the Ottoman Turks, and the British. In 1967, the Jews were surrounded by 1 million Arab soldiers from Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. They were outnumbered by 12-1. The Arabs were supported by 30 nations. They had been trained and assisted by the top military officials of Russia, and joined by 30 South Korean pilots. On the second day, they were joined by the Pakistani Air Force and aircraft from Libya, Algeria, Morocco, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. Israel was left alone to face the combined might of Muslims and Arabs' hostility. The entire world kept watching, expecting to see the destruction of the tiny state of Israel and the annihilation of the Jews. In 6 days, Israel defeated the combined Arab and Muslim armies and destroyed their planes before they took off in the 6-day war. How could such a small group of a few people who are hated by 1.5 billion Muslims achieve such a victory if God did not stand with them? Psalm 129 answers that question. No matter how nations who hate Israel cannot prevail. The United Nations issued over 370 resolutions condemning Israel for defending itself against the never-ending rocket attacks of the Palestinians, but were ominously silent against Palestinian aggression. Iran vowed to wipe Israel from the world map, and the UN issued no condemnation of such a threat. In conclusion, in her new book, the genius author Dr. Ibtihal has proven the right of the Jews to the land of Israel. She used historical and scriptural arguments to support the theme of her new book. I tried to give a brief book review to her book, but I am sure I have given an unsatisfactory summary of her new masterpiece book. Those who are interested in reading her work, I encourage them to consult the original book that has been written by the genius Sudanese woman Ibtihal Taha al-Amin on this current prominent issue, about the Muslim-Jewish conflict over the Eternal City, Jerusalem, and the Promised Land, the land that is flowing with milk and honey. Chapter 63. Founding the Muslims' Salvation Movement. Muslims have considered the Sudanese apostate woman Dr. Ibtihal's book on the Jews-Palestinians conflict over the Promised Land as the production of the Jewish Zionist movement. All Muslim imams and other religious leaders, and the Arab Christian scholars and church pastors and priests interpreted the arrest and trial of the founder of the anti-Islamic movement in Jerusalem as drama and a conspiracy to prepare the way for her anti-Palestinian book. Those Muslim intellectuals believe that the despicable Sudanese woman Ibtihal during her stay in Jerusalem has received a huge amount of money from the Zionist movement to author a book condemning the Palestinians' claim to their Arab land and supporting the false claim of the Jews on Palestine. The supporters of the conspiracy theory contended that the Jewish Zionists understood that the Sudanese founder of the anti-Islamic Muslims liberation movement gained worldwide support when the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands accepted her lawsuit against the two main Islamic sacred texts, the Holy Quran, and the blessed hadiths of the infallible prophet of God Muhammad. Therefore, the Zionists used her fame and name to support their false claim to the Arab land, Palestine. The conspiracy theory has been collectively believed and accepted by Muslims and Arabs all over the world. Accordingly, the Muslim apostate woman Dr. Ibtihal's book is placed on the list of forbidden books in all 55 Muslim countries. Other Arab and African countries such as Lebanon, Mauritania, Somalia, and Sudan placed the book on the forbidden list of anti-Islamic books and threatened everyone caught possessing or smuggling it in the country would be put to death. Despite that, the book has found worldwide reception and is read by millions of people in non-Muslim countries except India. For preventative measures, India as usual added the book to the list of the forbidden books and speeches of the controversial author Dr. Ibtihal. Unfortunately, for the first time, the new controversial book of the founder and CEO of the Muslims liberation movement has a negative effect on the movement. The critiques of the Muslim and Arab intellectuals convinced some Arab managers and apostatized Muslim followers of the liberation movement and led them to threaten to forsake the movement if Dr. Ibtihal does not withdraw her support to the Jewish Zionist claim on Palestine and support the Palestinians' right of possession of their Arab land. Notwithstanding, Dr. Ibtihal told them in no uncertain terms that she is not going to go against facts and support lies. If they want her to withdraw her support of the Jews' claim to the land, they have to convince her by supplying substantial evidence that the so-called Palestinians have the right to the promised land of the Jews. When the brave woman Dr. Ibtihal refused to yield to those Arabs and apostates' pressures and rejected their demands, the angry Arab protesters decided to distance themselves from the movement. Alas, that led to the first split in the Muslims' liberation movement. About 30 of the key directors and many apostatized followers of Muslims' liberation movement left. The separated group started a new movement, which they preferred to call the Muslim Salvation Movement. The new movement appointed the Palestinian Christian girl Warda Haddad its main leader. Before her split, Warda used to occupy the highest position of the Muslims' liberation movement in Western Canada, and she was the third person in the movement. Her split caused considerable damage to the movement. Dr. Kamal did everything he could to heal the split that happened inside the body of the movement. He traveled 5 times to Western Canada and conducted several meetings with many Arab managers. He has one-to-one meetings with the Palestinian Christian girl Warda. He promised Warda that he can convince his wife Ibtihal to make an important compromise to keep the unity of the movement. He also promised her he can convince his wife to consider her new controversial book to be her personal opinion, and as such, the Muslims' liberation movement has nothing to do with it. Despite the promises of Dr. Kamal, the Palestinian Christian girl Warda and her Arab supporters have rejected the compromise and demanded that Dr. Ibtihal must withdraw her support of the false Jews' claim on the Arab land and apologize to the Arab Palestinians, Muslims as well as Christians, for denying their right to Palestine. Dr. Ibtihal traveled in person to Vancouver City and requested Warda to meet with her and both directors to discuss the issue. Even so, the Palestinian Christian girl refused to meet with the CEO of the Muslims' liberation movement. She said she does not like to see the face or shake the hands of the woman who shook hands with the accursed Jewish Zionists. Moreover, Warda said that she cannot talk or negotiate with the cheap woman who received money from the Zionist movement to deny and sell the right of the Arab Palestinians to live in their Arab land. The Muslim apostate woman Dr. Ibtihal has been deeply hurt in her heart by the derogatory words and false accusations of the Arab Palestinian Christian girl Warda. When the negotiations between the highly educated Sudanese apostate man Dr. Kamal and his Muslim apostate wife Dr. Ibtihal failed with the Palestinian Christian girl Warda, the Arab protesters split from the Muslims' liberation movement and formed a new movement which they named the Muslim Salvation Movement in the world. The new movement adopted all the policies and principles of the Muslims' liberation movement, but added new conditions for accepting new members. The main one of those conditions is recognizing the right claim of the Arab Palestinians, Christians, and Muslims on Palestine. The second condition is naturally denying the right of the European Jewish invaders and Zionists to dwell in the Arab land. Besides that, the new movement adopted Christian approaches to spreading its cause. According to their new philosophy, the Muslim should be offered the gospel of Jesus, and not human man-made alternatives when he leaves his religion. The founder of the new movement believes that it would be better for the Muslim to remain in his religion than forsake it, and get no spiritual alternatives. In fact, the Muslims' liberation movement never puts conversion to Christianity as a condition for Muslims to forsake their religion. The main objective of the Muslims' liberation movement is to liberate the Muslim man or Muslim a woman from his or her dangerous and terrorist religious beliefs, and after that, it is up to him or her to choose to be a Christian or not. In short, the movement of the Sudanese Muslim apostate woman Dr. Ibtihal encourages its members to accept Jesus, but never forces them to do so. If the liberated Muslim chooses to be a non-religious person, or an atheist, still he can be accepted in the membership of the Muslims' liberation movement. Forcing a person to accept another religion against his wish is the motto of the false prophet of God Muhammad, who said, "I have been commanded to fight people until they say there is no God except Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. If they say it, they forbid from me their blood and wealth." The alleged prophet of God also said, "I have been sent, and the sword between my hands, so that no one should be worshipped except Allah." Again, the Antichrist prophet said whoever changes his religion should be killed. The Muslim apostate woman Dr. Ibtihal believes accepting or rejecting a new religion depends on someone's free conviction, and not coercion on his conscience. Chapter 63. The Consequences of Anti-Semitism in the West. Instead of focusing on the objectives of the new movement, which are supposed to be liberating Muslims from the dangerous teachings of the terrorist verses of the Quran, and the misogynistic hadiths of the alleged prophet of God Muhammad, Dr. Ibtihal found out that the Palestinian Christian girl Warda Haddad, who is the founder of the Muslim Salvation Movement, is employing every available means in her efforts on attacking her personally. The media in the Arab world as well as the non-Muslim world exaggerated the split and made it a huge issue, as if the Muslims' liberation movement is going to collapse at any time because of it. Before the Arab Palestinian Christian girl can convince the outside world of her erroneous and false accusations, the shrewd mind of the genius Sudanese apostate girl has figured out a plan to extinguish the fiery darts that have been ignited and fired at her and fueled by the media in the Arab countries. The founder of the Muslim Liberation Movement Dr. Ibtihal drafted a short book entitled Responses and Challenges to the False Accusations of the Founder of the New Muslim Salvation Movement. In her book, the controversial author Ibtihal replied to the accusations of the Palestinian Christian girl Warda, the founder of the new movement, and refuted them one after another. She stated that the founder of the new movement has based her accusations on an emotional and racial basis rather than factual pieces of evidence. According to her, the Palestinian girl Warda has believed the accusations of the Arab and Muslim media without verifying them. She stated further that Warda Haddad, who is the founder of the New Muslim Salvation Movement, should have supplied substantial evidence for her accusations against her before she spread them out. Dr. Ibtihal concluded this point by saying that the Arab-Palestinian Christian girl Warda Haddad, the key leader of the New Muslim Salvation Movement, may face legal charges if she would not supply proof of her accusations against the founder of the Muslims' liberation movement. On this ground, the author of the new controversial book has given Warda Haddad a couple of months to supply to her and to the media proofs of her accusations that Dr. Ibtihal has conspired with the Jewish Zionist movement during her visit to Israel and proof of the money that has been paid to her by the same Jewish group. In accordance, Dr. Ibtihal has threatened to bring the issue to the court of law if the Arab girl Warda has failed to supply her tangible pieces of evidence within 2 months. The daring challenges and threats of the Sudanese apostate girl Ibtihal have created a fundamental problem for the Palestinian Christian girl Warda and other Arab members of the New Muslim Salvation Movement. Warda suddenly realized that she made a sizable mistake. She is hating Dr. Ibtihal for authoring her latest book, which is supporting the Jewish claim, therefore she is wanting to punish her, harm her, steal her happiness, and finally destroy her movement. But she forgot that she is living in the West and not in the Middle East. In Western countries, no one could make such serious accusations that might result in character assassination and damaging the reputation of someone without having enough grounds to do so. Such a person could be legally prosecuted and face serious legal consequences if her accusations are not based on justifiable grounds. The Palestinian Christian girl Warda has found herself facing a serious dilemma. She has either to seek the pardon of her former boss or face the legal charges of her unjustifiable accusations. She knew and understood that she has no means of providing evidence for the accusations she learned from the Muslim and Arab media against the controversial author of the new book which supported the claim of the Jews on the Promised Land. While the Palestinian girl is pondering on her dilemma and trying desperately to find an escape from it, the Jewish Religious Council of Toronto threatened to sue the Arab Christian girl Warda Haddad, who is the founder of the New Muslim Salvation Movement, if she does not prove that the Jews have bribed the author of the recent controversial book and made her write a book supporting and justifying the Jews' claim on Israel. Warda is already standing on shifting sands, and when the Jewish Religious Council of Toronto threatened to bring her to justice, that ground is removed, and she began to sink into the bottomless pit. She found herself being caught up between two jaws with absolutely no way out. She approached her legal advisor and inquired about the 2 threats that were directed against her unprovable accusations of the founder of the Muslims' liberation movement. The legal advisor informed her that unless she supplied evidence to back up her allegations against the founder of the Muslims' liberation movement and the Jews, or sought the pardon of the 2, she would face serious legal charges. The legal advisor told her further that such accusations might be blindly acceptable in an anti-Semitic society like the Middle East, but in Canada, they are considered malicious accusations and would amount to severe punishment in Canadian law. To come out of the serious troubles she has placed herself into, the Palestinian Christian girl Warda begged her former female boss Dr. Ibtihal and the Muslims Liberation Movement Board of Directors to pardon her. She promised to make restitution by apologizing to the media and admitting that she had been deluded by the Middle East media, which made her believe the allegations. The board of directors, including Dr. Kamal, are not willing to accept her apology, but the kind Sudanese girl Dr. Ibtihal agreed to pardon her. Consequently, the Palestinian Christian girl Warda made an official apology and confessed to the media that she had been misled by her anti-Semitic hatred and racial discrimination against the Jews in the society she was born and brought up, and hence blindly believed the false allegations against Dr. Ibtihal that the Middle East media propagated. When Warda made her apology in the media, Dr. Ibtihal convinced the board of directors to receive her back if she wants to return to her former position as the third person in the Muslims' liberation movement. But Warda refused to come back, and she determined to continue her new movement. In the meantime, the Jewish Religious Council of Toronto refused to withdraw its complaint against the racial remarks that the Palestinian Christian girl Warda spoke against the Jews in the media. Dr. Ibtihal tried to intervene between the Jewish Council and the anti-Semite Palestinian Christian girl Warda, but she couldn't succeed. Eventually, Warda faced the consequences of her unjustifiable racial remarks against the Jews. She has been tried, convicted, and sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. With its female founder, the Palestinian Christian girl Warda has been thrown behind bars. The new Muslim Salvation movement gradually withered away. Eventually, its few anti-Semites Arab members joined some anti-Zionist Arabic Christian groups in Vancouver and Calgary cities, and became inactive as an independent movement. Aside from the trial, conviction, and imprisonment of the Palestinian Christian girl Warda, the gifted author Dr. Ibtihal is inspired to write a new book that deals in detail with the hostile attitudes and anti-Semitism among the Arab Christians of the Middle East and North Africa, such as the Palestinians, Lebanese, Jordanians, Syrians, Iraqis, and of course the Copts of Egypt towards the Jews of Israel. Chapter 64. Anti-Semitism among Christians and Arabs. Instead of supporting the Jews and the State of Israel, many Arab Christians are openly anti-Semitic. Without exaggeration, some Arab Christians hate Israel and the Jews more than the Arab Muslims hate them. They believe that Jews have no right to live in that small patch of land in the Middle East in which they are currently living in. Some of the Arab Christian religious leaders and teachers openly preach in their churches and their schools anti-Semitism or hatred towards the Jews. Of course, in that way Arab Christian preachers are under the erroneous teachings of the so-called replacement theology. They believe that the church has replaced Israel, and they are the new Israelites. When that satanic doctrine crept into the ancient churches, it resulted in the Jews being persecuted and killed all over Europe. The Jews are considered to be a condemned and cursed race because they rejected and crucified their King Jesus Christ. Wrong understanding of the difference between the church and Israel resulted in replacement theology, and that led to anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews. Martin Luther was a staunch believer in replacement theology, and openly expressed his anti-Semitism towards the Jews in his infamous book, On the Jews and Their Lies. He said that the Jews are base, whoring people, that is, no people of God, and their boast of lineage, circumcision, and the law must be accounted as filth. They are full of the devil's feces, which they wallow in like swine. The synagogue is a defiled bride, yes, an incorrigible whore, and an evil slut. He argued that their synagogues and schools must be set on fire, their prayer books destroyed, rabbis must be forbidden to preach, homes razed, and property and money confiscated. They should be shown no mercy or kindness, afforded no legal protection, and these poisonous and venomed worms should be drafted into forced labor or expelled for all time. He also advocated their murder, writing, "We are at fault in not slaying them." A true Christian must be pro-Israel and love the Jews and bless them and pray for their salvation. That does not mean he should blindly support Israel in everything it does. It is true that God has hardened the hearts and blinded the eyes of his chosen people after they rejected their Christ, the King Jesus, and crucified him. Jesus predicted their punishment when he spoke about the destruction of the temple, which took place when the Roman commander, Titus, in the year 70 AD destroyed it and murdered over 1 million Jews. It is true also that for over 1900 years the Jews were driven out of their land and scattered all over the world. It was the Roman Emperor Hadrian who drove them out of their country in 135 AD and changed its name from Judea to Palestine, and he renamed Jerusalem after his name, Aelia Capitolina. He did that because he knew the bitter enemies of the Jews at that time were the ancient Philistines, the worshippers of Dagon, from whom came the giant Goliath who was slain by David. The Roman Emperor Hadrian forbade the Jews to return to their land at the pain of death. The destruction of the Jewish temple in 70 AD by Titus, and the expulsion of the Jews in 135 by Hadrian, were interpreted by the Church as the end of Judaism. The Church has erroneously thought to be the replacement of Israel, and Christians have considered being the new Israelites. This fallacious teaching is prevailing in many churches until the present time. The ancient Philistines who used to live in southern Israel have nothing to do with today's Arab Palestinians, but are erroneously called Palestinians after the ancients. The Philistines of South Judea were originally from the island of Crete, which is mentioned in the book of Acts, chapter 27, verse 7. They spoke a different language from the Arabic language today. They are extinct people today. It was, during the 19th century, that due to the growing anti-Semitic attitudes in Europe, some European writers began to refer to the Arabs of Palestine as Palestinians. The history of Islam showed that those Arabs started to live in that land only after the second Caliph Omar ibn al-Khattab ordered his Mujahideen troops to invade Palestine, which lasted from 634 to 636. In 636, at the Battle of Yarmouk, the Muslim Mujahideen defeated the Byzantine army and began to occupy the Levant, today Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Israel. Before the invasion of Islam, the land had long been inhabited by various Christian groups. Christians' presence in Palestine increased after the conversion to Christianity by the pagan Roman Emperor Constantine in the year 312 AD. At the beginning of the 4th century, Constantine's mother, Saint Helena, built the Church of the Sepulchre and the Church of Nativity in the Promised Land of the expelled Jews. The Christians of Palestine were called collectively Arabs only after Islam made a significant presence in the region. Before that time, most of the Palestinians were Assyrian, Phoenician, Chaldean Christians, and other Christian minority groups of different ethnic origins. Before Islam invaded the Levant, Christians of Palestine and Lebanon were collectively called Byzantine Christians. Phoenicians are today called Lebanese people. Some Jews who used to live in other parts of the Arabian lands faced Islamic persecution and moved back to their land. For example, the Jews of Medina and Khaybar cities were expelled from their cities by the Prophet Muhammad and came and settled in Palestine. One entire Jewish tribe, known as Banu Qurayza, was annihilated by the Prophet Muhammad. 900 Jewish men and small boys were massacred while the women were sold as slaves to other Arab tribes. Muhammad took to himself a Jewish girl of 14 years old and made her his concubine. The Quran spoke of this massacre, and he brought those of the people of the scripture who supported them down from their strongholds and cast panic into their hearts. Some of them you slew, and ye made captive some. And he caused you to inherit their land and their houses and their wealth, and land ye have not trodden. Allah is able to do all things. Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verses 26 to 27. However, the Holy Bible said God's promises are irrevocable. He has given the children of Israel, today are called Jews, the land of the Canaanites, as an everlasting inheritance. It was renamed Israel by the Israelites at the time of their first 3 kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. Then the kingdom got divided, after the death of King Solomon, into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. After their return from the Babylonian captivity, the land was divided into Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. When the Jews rejected their Messiah the King, and crucified him, God scattered them all over the world. There was no country that the Jews did not run to, and there was no nation that did not persecute and kill them. The Jews were treated by the Church and many Christians as Christ killers and curse people, and hence persecuted throughout the centuries. The Black Death, also called the bubonic plague, which claimed the lives of 30 million and 500 million people worldwide, was blamed on the Jews. Their dietary customs of washing hands before eating saved them from the outbreak. They were accused of having a secret pact with the devil. Satan was protecting them, and they were paying him back by poisoning the wells of water of Christians. Many of them were put to death under this false accusation. In Spain, Jewish children were taken from their parents and given to Christian families to raise them up as Christians. Jews were given two options, either to convert to Christianity or leave Spain. Thousands of them left Spain and settled in North Africa. Those who agreed to convert to Christianity were accused of being pretenders and tortured to death through the notorious Spanish Inquisition. While they were on their way to the Holy Land to free it from the Muslims, the Catholic Crusaders said, "Why we should wait until we reach there to kill the infidels? We have infidels here in Europe." Then they killed thousands of European Jews. Several times, Jews were baptized against their wishes and forced to convert to Christianity. In Russia, Jews were forced to serve 25 years in the Russian army. Many countries forbade Jews to work, and hence they were compelled to lend money for usury. They were still persecuted for being moneylenders. They were forced to live in ghettos. The ghettos are parts of a city in which members of a minority group live, especially because of social, legal, or economic pressure. The term was originally used in Venice City to describe the part of the city to which Jews were restricted and segregated. In 1902 to 1903, in Russia, a forged document appeared, which was called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. It included a Jewish conspiracy supposedly drafted by the Elders of Zion, teaching Jews everywhere how to take over the world, take control of the media and the financial institutions, change the traditional social order, etc. It was the first known conspiracy theory in the world. The first Russian investigation concluded that the protocols first appeared in Paris in anti-Semitic circles around 1897 to 1898. The same document was later reproduced by the secret police of France and used against the French Jews. It had been translated into all major languages in Europe and used in many European cities as anti-Semitic means to persecute Jews and expel them from many countries. A translation made by an Arab Christian appeared in Cairo in 1927, this time as a book. The first translation by an Arab Muslim was also published in Cairo, but only in 1951. Perhaps the most classical example of the anti-Semitism was the legend of the Wandering Jew, also called the Eternal Jew. This legend was produced in thousands of works of literature in all countries of Europe, from Russia to Spain. It had been believed by millions as a true story. The Wandering Jew or the Eternal Jew was a medieval legend about a Jew who refused to give Jesus water, or did not allow him to lean on his wall, while Christ was carrying his cross, on his way to the Golgotha. As punishment for his sin, this Jew was condemned by God to eternal restless wandering and suffering until the second return of Christ. Everyone wishes to have a long life, but happy long life. But this Jew was condemned to a long life of continuous suffering and continuous restless wandering. This legend appeared in European literature and folklore tales in many different versions. Many names and identifications were attributed to this wandering eternal Jew. He was known as Ahasuerus or Budadius. He was identified as a shoemaker in Jerusalem at the time of Jesus. He was also identified as a shadow, the Antichrist, or a vagabond beggar like Cain, or the sacred executioner who crucified Christ. Many religious leaders and ordinary people claim to have sighted Ahasuerus from far, or had a real encounter with him. He walks in lonely places such as jungles, valleys, mountains, deserts, highways, haunted places, and the like. He appears to people as a ghost, a shadow, an old man, and warns them about the sin of unbelief. An American bishop visited Europe and claimed to have seen the Eternal Jew, and that legend traveled with him to the States. European folk belief associates Ahasuerus' appearance in a certain locality with wars, plagues, and ultimately with the Last Judgment and the Second Coming of Christ. There are no morals behind this legend except that it is a creation of a fictional figure about anti-Semitism against the Jews. It depicted the Jews as cursed, condemned, and wandering people on earth. This false belief persisted until the present time. The culmination of anti-Semitism reached its height in Nazi Germany under the greatest tyrant of human history, Adolf Hitler. He said in his infamous book, Mein Kampf, "The personification of the devil as the symbol of all evil assumes the living shape of the Jew. And so, the Jew advances on his fatal road until another force comes forth to oppose him, and in a mighty struggle hurls the heaven-stormer back to Lucifer." Germany is today the next great war aim of Bolshevism. It requires all the force of a young missionary idea to raise our people up again, to free them from the snares of this international serpent, Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Hitler continues to say, "Hence today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord." Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Hitler drafted his book when he was in prison. When he came to power, he attempted to destroy an entire race, the Jews. The brutalist genocidal tyrant had been influenced by anti-Semitism, which was already 2,000-year-old. It was like a snowball that kept rolling for centuries until it reached its zenith in the Nazi Germany Holocaust, which led to the mass murder, or genocide of 6 million Jews, of whom 1.5 million Jewish children, and 2 million Jewish women. A network of over 40,000 facilities in Germany and German-occupied territories was used to concentrate, hold, and kill the Jews. Hitler thought that he was acting according to the will of God. Today, the new Nazi Germany is Iran, and the new Hitler and his Nazis are the Iranian leaders who vowed to wipe Israel from the world's map. This also is included in the second article of the Palestinian Hamas Constitution. They want to drive all the Jews into the Mediterranean Sea. Their prophet Muhammad promised them that the last hour will not come until Muslims will kill all the Jews of the world. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger, may peace be upon him, as saying, "The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, 'Muslim, O the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him,' but the tree Garkad would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews." Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 41, Hadith number 6985. Anti-Semitism in Islam can be put as the Quran and the hadiths of the alleged prophet of God Muhammad from A to Z, without exaggeration, are anti-Semitic religious texts. You cannot be a true Muslim if you do not hate the Jews, curse them day and night, and also strive hard to kill them. According to the teachings of Islam, the Jews are debased, cursed, anathematized forever by God, and so they can never repent and be forgiven. They are cheaters and traitors, defiant and stubborn, prophet killers, liars who falsify the scripture and take bribes, ritually unclean infidels, with a foul odor emanating from them. In classical Islam, the image of the Jew is derogatory and malevolent. The Quran and Hadiths state that some Jews were cursed by God and turned into apes, pigs, and rats. "And well you knew those amongst you, children of Israel, who transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath, we said to them, Be ye apes, despised and rejected." Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 65. Say, shall I inform you of what is worse than that as penalty from Allah? It is that of those, the Jews, whom Allah has cursed and with whom he became angry and made of them apes and pigs and slaves of Tagut, which means Satan. Those are worst in position and further astray from the sound way. Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, verse 60. The Prophet Muhammad said, a group of Israelites was lost. Nobody knows what they did. But I do not see them except that they were cursed and changed into rats. Sahih al-Bukhari, Hadith number 4. Anti-Semitism in Islam is a vast topic. It needs a separate chapter to expose it in detail. Since this chapter focuses on anti-Semitism among Arab Christians, in a later chapter we will discuss the verses of the Quran and the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, which incite hatred and command the killing of the people of the book, Jews and Christians. The late Pope of the Coptic Church, Shenouda III, refused to visit Israel until he died. He forbade all the Coptic Christians of Egypt to visit Israel or support the Jews. Here are some extracts from the many anti-Semitic remarks by Pope Shenouda. From the Arabic National Point, we should not abandon our Palestinian brothers and our Arabic brothers by normalizing our relations with the Jews. From the church point of view, Copts who go to Jerusalem betray their church. Pope Shenouda also said, "Do not believe their claims that they are God's chosen people, because it is not true." He also said during his weekly sermon on Wednesday evening at the papal residence in Abbassia, "Jews are a people that God has cursed." Pope Shenouda called the Jews Christ killers. And in July 2008, he told Egypt's Al-Arm newspaper, "Jews are accursed people who have their hands indulged in the blood of Palestinians." He also forbade all Copts from visiting Jerusalem as long as it remains occupied, meaning as long as there are Jews in it. Shenouda said that he had spoken earlier with former U.S. President Jimmy Carter and explained to him that Jews were called God's chosen people because they were the only followers and worshippers of God on earth, while the rest of its inhabitants were pagans. Once billions believed in the existence of God, the Jews no longer were God's chosen people, he said, and now all those who believe in God and have true faith are God's chosen people. According to a translation of an interview with the Egyptian Coptic Patriarch Shenouda III, provided by the Middle East Media Research Institute, MEMRI, the Coptic leader told an interviewer on Egyptian TV that the Vatican was wrong to apologize for longtime church teachings about Jews as Christ killers. Pope Shenouda is not the first one to incite Coptic violence against Jews. As a matter of fact, the Copts were not only extremely anti-Semitic, as they continue to be, but they often led the Muslims in pogroms against the Jews of Egypt. There are almost no Jews left in Egypt today, and the Copts joined the Muslims in calling for the Jews' expulsion. Many Jewish homes and properties were taken not by Muslims, but by Copts. George Saliba, the Maronite Syriac Orthodox Church's bishop in Lebanon, in an interview with Al Dunya TV, declared that the source behind all these movements, all these civil wars, and all these evils in the Arab world is nothing other than Zionism, deeply rooted in Judaism. The Jews, he says, are responsible for financing and inciting the turmoil in accordance with the protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Islamic terrorist attack on the Syriac Catholic Our Lady of Salvation Church in Baghdad left 58 dead and 67 were wounded in the worst attack on the Iraqi Christian community since 2003. The Iraqi Patriarch Gregory III Laham characterized the terrorist attacks on Iraq's Christians as part of a Zionist conspiracy against Islam. He further affirmed, "All this behavior has nothing to do with Islam, but it is actually a conspiracy planned by Zionism, and it aims at undermining and giving a bad image of Islam." He then said the massacre is also a conspiracy against Arabs and the predominantly Muslim Arab world that aims at depicting Arabs and Muslims in Arab countries as terrorists and fundamentalist murderers to deny them their rights, especially those of the Palestinians. In an interview with NBN TV on November 9, 2010, Iraqi priest Father Sohail Kasha claimed that the Jews consider all Gentiles to be beasts, and asserted that the real danger to Middle Eastern Christians came from Zionism. He went on to state that those who perpetrated the attack on the church in Baghdad were certainly not Muslims, but probably those trained and supervised by global Zionism. After showing these few negative remarks out of the huge archive of anti-Semitism among the Arab Christians, we must mention why the Jews are called the chosen people of God. The Abrahamic Covenant. God called Abraham and said to him, "And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, and so, you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." The Book of Genesis, chapter 12, verses 2-3. The blessings in these two verses are promised to those who bless the Jews, the great nation that came from Abraham, and the curses to those who curse the Jews. I believe that all Arab Christians who hate the Jews and refuse to support Israel are going against God's will and deserve the curse of God in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. In fact, to hate the Jews is equal to hating God. God has blessed the United States of America and made it the greatest country in the world because it is supporting Israel, and when the Jews got persecuted and killed in Europe, America took them in and gave them safe refuge. Today, the center of all world's activities is the nation of Israel. The Jewish nation was attempted destruction by Nazi Germany, Haman of Persia, see the Book of Esther, and Pharaoh of Egypt, see the Book of Exodus. They were expelled out of their country by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Romans. Still, they survived and returned. 3 times, they had been out of their promised land, and 3 times they returned to it. One day a Jew was told, "You are the chosen people." He said, "I wish he chose somebody else." This is because no other people are as persecuted as the Jews. Until the year 2000, there were 663 Nobel Prize winners, 140 of them are Jews. The global Jewish population is approximately 14 million, or about 0.02% of the world's population. As of the year 2013, 193 Nobel Prize winners are Jews. The global Islamic population is approximately 1.5 billion, or roughly 20% of the world's population. As of the year 2013, only 14 Nobel Prize recipients are Muslims. Times magazine put the 20 top people in the world, 60% of them are Jews. 30% of the Supreme Court in America are Jews. 13% of law colleges professors in America are Jews. Of college-age Jews, 80% of them are in university. 60% of all top Hollywood positions are held by Jews. 40% of New York's lawyers are Jews. 10% of U.S. college professors are Jews. 23% of the wealthiest people in America are Jews. 20% of the wealthiest people in Canada are Jews. Mark Twain once said, "All things are passing away except the Jews." Frederick the Great, King of Russia, asked his court chaplain to prove the inerrancy of the Bible. He said, "One word, sir, Israel." By watching the Jews, you can see what God is doing. 64 of the Holy Bible's 66 books were written by Jews except for 2 which were written by a Gentile, Luke. The Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts. We, Christians, hold in our hands a Jewish book. This is the nation that gave us the 10 Commandments, the finished law of God. The incarnation of God into humanity came to us through the descendant of David, a Jew, the Lord Jesus Christ. Western civilization is shaped and developed through the Bible. No nation in the entire world has come remotely close to the Jewish nation. The beginning of this nation is the book of Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. It is the foundation on which everything else is built. God called a barren man Abram, and his barren wife Sarai. Out of the dead womb of Sarah, he created this miracle nation. All Jews trace their origin to one single man, Abraham. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3 is called the Abrahamic covenant. God gave by an oath to Abraham this nation. God swears that this covenant will be done. In verse 1, he promised to give him a land, the land of Canaan, the present day the land of Israel. In verse 2, he promised him a son, Isaac, and that his son would found a great nation, the Jewish nation. In verse 3, he commanded him to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Through his seed, Jesus Christ, the entire world is going to be blessed. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get you out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curses you. And in you shall all families of the earth be blessed. This is the Abrahamic covenant which stated in the book of Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. From this nation came the knowledge of God's law, redemption, Bible, and reality of life. This nation is blessed with an everlasting blessing, given a land forever, the promised land, present day, Israel, West Bank, Gaza, Sinai, and Jordan, and became a vehicle for a universal blessing for the entire world. The Apostle Paul said, For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, Romans chapter 11, verse 29. Therefore, Israel has never, and will never be a cursed nation. To call the Jews a cursed people is blasphemy. Simply put, to hate that nation is to hate God, and to love that nation is to love God.